here for our dandelion lesson today, and was thinking and thinking about what I wanted to do, and I really just felt like painting a tiny bird with you and teaching you from a very organic perspective how to paint a tiny bird without worrying, and really how simple it is to paint a bird from your imagination. And I want to teach you this so anytime you need to create a little friend for yourself, you can do it. I used to spend a lot of time painting little birds and drawing little birds. And this one is from, I don't know, maybe 2015 or 2014 when I was first learning how to draw and paint, teaching myself how to draw and paint. And I would spend hours and hours and hours drawing tiny birds and painting tiny birds from memory to practice, right? To find some poetry in their form without having to be a slave to a reference photo. And of course, this is not the same as painting or drawing a real bird as a specimen that you want to capture. That's different. And we have lots of lessons here about how to do that. This is different. This is about painting from your inner spirit, from your own sense of a poetic vision of a bird. And it couldn't be more simple, really. And there's a lot of ways, and a lot of ways to use colors. And my suggestion is that you use colors that speak to you in the moment and let your bird be any color in the whole universe of colors that speaks to you, okay? So I'm going to use this as my guide because I think this is a really good example of a simple way to paint or draw a tiny bird. This is graphite, which you can surely tell. There's a few things that I think are important about painting a tiny bird that doesn't end up looking silly or cartoonish or without presence, right? And so I think the first thing is the eye. The eye is probably the most important part. So even if your beak is a little wonky, and even if his head's a little misshapen, or things are a little bit in the wrong place, if the eye has soul in it, has that spark of life in it, you have succeeded. So we're going to start with thinking about that. The other thing is to keep it simple, to not animate them too much, right? So keep it simple, simple forms. If you'll notice, my little bird is really the shape of an egg. And that's the simplest place to start, right? And if you have trouble drawing an egg, I'm going to show you an easy way to do it, an easier way to do it. I suggest keeping the stance of the bird somewhat forward facing. This bird has his head turned to the side, which is the easiest way to draw a bird. From the front is not always that appealing, to be honest with you, as far as a drawing goes. They can be really fun, but I think this is the most elegant view of most birds because we really see the beak and we really see the eye. So, so keep it, the simpler the better, right? All right, so I'm going to put this out in front of me and I can look at it while I'm expressing what I think are the important things to remember and how to go about it. Okay, whoops. So first I'm just going to use hot press watercolor paper. That's what I prefer. You can use cold press too. It really doesn't matter. And I've got a pencil here, just a number 2 pencil, mechanical pencil. I've got a brush in case I need it. I've got erasers, all of that good stuff. Whatever I need for drawing my simple egg shape I have got water, a little palette to mix my colors on if I need to, and it's got some colors left over on it. And you know what? That's fine. It makes any color that I mix on here more real. Whenever we have a little bit of other colors mixed into things, it just makes them more real. And then I have the colors that I chose today that are really speaking to me today. And this is a custom palette from Essie Colors. And it's mostly neutrals with some malachite, which I love. They're malachite in a natural green earth mica called Alamana green, Alaman or Alamana green, and this is their malachite, which is quite beautiful. There's some brown and some grays and a gold and a graphite and just really beautiful nuanced colors. These colors really speak to me today. And I'm going to start by wetting those as always, so they have time to wake up and show me all of their beautiful qualities, especially malachite. Malachite is a gemstone, and gemstone paints are notoriously difficult to wake up, so we want to give it time. All right. So while we're waiting for that, and actually I might just use the brush they sent to me. This is a, it might be too big actually. It's too big. This is a size 12 that I have not been that nice to. I used it for some acrylic one day and it's never been the same. My bad. I know better, but I did it, and let me just shape it and then stick it in its holder here. It's a travel brush that was really, really nice, and I kind of messed it up. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to use a size 2 for my brush, and then of course I'll have a brush to mix with. So let's start by drawing our little bird, okay? And I'm going to show you over here how so you can practice it a little bit, how I like to draw an egg shape. And remember that our egg shape it can be straight up. This one is a little bit on its side, right? So I'm going to draw it and just see what happens. The cool thing is when we do it this way is that it's going to turn out a little bit different every time, and that's wonderful. So I'm going to start with a little circle as natural as I can be, and look how wonky it is. It's not perfect at all. And then underneath that circle, I'm going to draw another circle that's just a little bit bigger and longer. Okay? That's it. I can do it another time. Maybe that one, it turns out like this. See how wonky it is? My hands are shaky today, which is not unusual. But once I have these two components, so we can think about these as the bird's head and the bird's body. And all I really want to do then is I want to smooth it out. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to join. I'm going to join them and just sort of flatten it off a little bit at the bottom and then bring it up. And that's the shape of my bird in that case. So I'm going to do the same with this one, just sort of smooth it out, flatten it off at the bottom a little bit, give him a belly. All right. So once I have these basic shapes, I'm going to do one more. Well, I'll just do these two. Then I want to erase everything that doesn't matter. All right, so everything that's inside, I want to erase, and I want to lighten up my outer line too. This pencil is rather dark. This is a 2B. I would use like a 2H or HB or H or something. I'm just doing it darker so you can see it better. But you always want your graphite to be as light as possible. So you can see that I can lift the extra lines, right? And then I can take my kneaded eraser and I can lift even more. Once I have that outline, I can lift even more of the graphite up and just have this very subtle suggestion of the shape of a bird. Okay? So both of these birds have different gestures. They have different personalities already, right? And then once I have my bird shape, okay, and they're going to be different every time. Maybe these two birds are going to be on the same branch. So I'm going to draw the simple gesture of my branch, and it's going to come up just about to here, right? And it's just going to curve up, and who knows, maybe I'll draw another little bit down there. But then I can just take my pencil and draw 3 toes, kind of sticking out to the side, 1 long, 2 short, and heavens to Betsy, look at that. It's just This one's probably too far down, so I'm gonna make this branch a little bit. You can't have the branch too high up because the bird would not be able to perch on it naturally. So we want his little toes to be able to come out here somehow. And honestly, it doesn't need to be that crazy realistic, right? It looks like it's gonna work. So for his eye, I'm gonna go into the center of his head and I'm gonna draw a line kind of in the center, right? And it can slant down, it can slant up. Actually, let this one slant up. Okay, so you'll see how you can change these up as much as you want to. Let me just get rid of the one that was slanting down. So this one's kind of going up in that direction. This one's kind of going straight across. And then just about to the center here, I'm going to draw an eye. I'm going to draw half on the top and half on the bottom. And then this is going to be the center of my beak. And then I'm going to make the other parts of the beak come out. All right. So just about to the center, not quite. I'm going to draw my eye half on the top and half on the bottom. And then this is the center of the beak. And this is the beak. And you can look at different bird shapes and pick whatever shape of beak you want, or you can completely invent it. I just completely invent it. They usually tend to be really tiny. And then I can just erase the rest of those lines. And there I have my basic bird shape. Okay, that's it. All right. Now there's a few other things we like to think about when we think about our birds. All right. One of them is that they have a little cheek, right? So about from the eye, a little bit down and a little bit up is the cheek area. So I can just sort of fill that in. Right? It's like a little V, little scoop shape like that. And that's just going to give you a little bit of a sensation of that cheek. And you can use that to put a shadow on when we're painting our little bird. And then over here, he might have the hint. Here's the hint of side wings, and there might be more over here. And you can add that or not add it. That doesn't really matter, but you might want to put a little bit of it in. So that's my basic bird shape. These two little guys are super different from one another, all right? So I'm going to do another one over here that's a little bit bigger. And this time, let's see. I'm going to make it like that. And every time you do it, will be a little bit different, you know? And what am I going to do first? I'm going to get rid of all the extra lines. Lighten up my lines as much as possible. Okay. He's kind of short and squat. Love him. And then what do? I decide on the direction of his head, and I think I'm gonna have him about like this, and a little bit less than halfway. I'm gonna draw half of my eye on top, half of it on the bottom. And my beak's gonna be like that, sort of. And then always erasing my extra lines. So he's kind of looking off to the side. And then a little bit of a cheek, and then let's see, I'm going to put the branch. You can also just pull your line straight through, and you don't have to do the whole branch, right? And here's his little feet sticking out. On top. And now let's say I want to draw a tail. So I'm going to go from the center of his head and draw a line straight down. and then draw a little tail. Just keep it really simple. Doesn't matter. All right. So there's my tail. And then of course I'm going to erase his little feathers might be hanging over the branch. Or the branch might be like this. And then we can just paint the branch later, but just keep it as simple as possible. So the branch is in front of his body, right? All right, super, super easy. He's just kind of chubby and adorable. And I see a little bit of his wing here, so I'm just going to draw a little line like that. And then over here, I barely see any. Okay? Simple. All right. So now that I have him drawn, I want to paint my eye first. If the eye doesn't work, we just want to start over, honestly. Eye is the only part that really has to work. And my suggestion when you're first starting to do these little birds is to do your eye with, where is it? I just had it. With a black pen, and I need to find it. Like a tiny black pen. Let me go grab one. So a micron pen, like a 003 or a 005, okay? And how I do it, all right, is I am going to draw on the upper edge of his eye. I'm going to draw a little circle, leave it open. I'm going to outline the eye in little dots, making sure it has a little point on one end, down, a little point on this end, okay? And then above the, where I've left the catch light, the little circle inside, I'm going to color it in. And then below it, I'm going to color it in the center, leaving the edges light. Okay, so it's dark underneath and dark above. You've got the white space and then some white space on either side. And we're going to fill that in with paint later. But that's just a good structure. It gives you your little feature of the eye right away. And you know that it's going to be successful because we can just paint in a little bit of watercolor on either side of that and give it a sort of a glassy three-dimensional look. Okay? All right. So now I want to choose my colors. My little bird is drawn. He's already looking really soft and poetic, I think. And I definitely want to use the malachite. My little bird today, my little friend, is going to have green wings. And so I'm going to take some of the malachite and put it onto my palette. And I'm going to start with that green wing. It's just like really speaking to me. So I will take, and you can be as imaginative as you want. There are no rules about this, okay? So I'm going to take some malachite and I'm going to paint his little green wing, and I'm going to just, if he has one. If he doesn't, he doesn't. You can paint his body green if you want to, or any color, it doesn't matter. Okay, so there's some malachite. I'm going to drop some more in. A little bit darker in some areas. And then at the top of it, I'm just going to push some water into it so it sort of gradually fades up into his body. Okay? And I think a bird with a green wing is going to also have a green tail. And so I'm going to come down here and paint his tail also green. And I'm just going to paint each little of the 3 sections that I drew with some of my green paint. So it's just perfect. Then again, I'll push a little bit of water into the top part, so it's just going to soften into there. All right. Okay, so his wing is done. Now, I want to take a little bit of gray. So if you don't have gray in your palette, I have one called Paris Gray, and I'm going to add a lot of water to it. If you don't have a gray in your palette, you can mix a gray, and you know you can mix a gray with blue and orange. That's the easiest way to mix a gray. And I'm going to start by just putting a little bit of that gray paint under his cheek, rinsing my brush, and just softening it in so it just sort of softens down into the rest of the bird. It can just sort of disappear. All right, but it's going to define that cheek. And then I want to do the same with a little bit of gray from his eye to his beak, because there's always a little shadow there. All right, and just put a little shadow in there. And then I might take a little bit of gray and put it underneath the branch and underneath his belly, sort of toward the center. And you don't need a whole lot, right? Just a little bit, just to give him a little bit of shadow. And you can just scrub it in there like that. And then soften. And leave some white bits, right? Just a little bit of shadow on our bird. And then there also might be a little bit of gray at the top of his head. We don't know what color his head's going to be yet, right? Just give him a little bit of depth. And especially like under where the branch meets the body, because it's going to be a little bit in shadow down there and down here where his belly sort of curves in. Don't worry about the branch. We'll paint the branch later, or the feet. The feet are just 3 little lines at the end. All right, that just gives him a little bit of shape. Also, where the neck curves in and his wing starts, we could put a little gray in there. All right, so basically he's still pretty light all over, but he's got a little bit of shadow on him. Okay, so now I want to let him dry for a minute, because I want to put the beak on, and I want to put some color on his body, but I want this gray to dry. It's sort of like our foundation, okay? While I'm waiting, I can also paint the eyes, so I can get some dark gray or black, right, and put it on my palette, and make sure it's very fluid so you can see through it. This is sort of a warm black, and it's called Rome Black. And if you need a smaller brush, get a smaller brush. You can use like a 000 or something. But I'm going to avoid the catch light, and I'm going to paint the sides of his eye where I left them white. And so they're not going to be as dark as the rest of it, right? But so that gives his eye a 3-dimensional appearance, and it looks glassy. And that's all we really need to do. All right. I think we can go ahead and paint the beak, and I think I want his beak to be dark, so I'm going to use the same dark color that I used for the iris of the eye. And I'm going to come to his beak. I'm going to paint the little line, and go in a little bit, okay, into where his feathers would be. All right, and I'm going to bring it down like this, and it's almost like a kite shape, and paint the lower part of his beak. One color, rinse my brush, dry it off, and then just use a damp brush to sort of bring that color up to the top half. So we want the bottom half of his beak to be darker and the top half to be lighter. That's really all you need to do. Just really, really simple. Okay? All right, let's let him dry for a minute, and we'll come back. Okay, so while my bird continues to firm up a little bit, I want to paint my branch. And I'm going to use brown. I've got a Castle Earth color here that I'm going to put on my palette, and I'm going to put, just mix it right into whatever's on my palette. That's fine. Even bring up some of this darker color. So I've got brown, right? Lots of water and the brown. And I'm going to start with the one that's a little bit, the side that's a little bit lighter with lots of water. I'm going to start right by the bird's feet. And I'm not going to be perfect with it. I'm going to bring water into it so it sort of trails off, and then grab some of the darker color and drop it in here and there at the bottom side and let it be as organic as possible. And then I'll bring it here underneath the foot to near the other foot. And then over here. Grab some of that darker color. It's pretty dark already under the bird. Grab some water, push it in here. Bring it up into his little belly with just some little marks like that. Keep it really simple. And then you can always just drop in a little water. And it's so small that you don't need a lot of detail in it, right? Sometimes it's fun to try to get a little bit of texture in there, a little bit of rough edges. It's not too perfect. We don't want a perfect branch. We want it to be not perfect. All right, and then at the end, we can either draw the feet on with our pen again, or we can use watercolor, but we want this to dry a little bit first, okay? So now I want to think about the colors for the rest of my bird, and I want to put a little bit of this color. It's like a golden ochre with some gold mica in it, and I'm just feeling it. And so I'm going to start here and just put a few bits of that color on, and then blend between the two with just softening with water. Just pushing water in there and letting it just soften like that. Do you see how I left a little, there's water, just a little bit of white there? I didn't, so it looks like a feather is just on top, right? These little things, by working quickly and not too precious, really make a difference, all right? I'm gonna take a little bit of that color too and just use it here on this feather that's sort of behind. And don't make it too perfect. Take a clean, damp brush then and just sort of blend it in so it's just not, it's not too perfect, right? And then I might want to take a little bit of that gray that I was using initially and kind of come up here, because the feather, the tail feather, anything up here would be a little bit darker underneath the branch. There's shadow there, right? So just, I'm using a little bit of that gray to make sure my tail is in shadow at the top. Okay. Now, I think I want my bird to, I'm going to use a little bit of this allemande green because I love it. That's the main reason. And let me find a spot to put it on my palette. And I am going to paint his head with a little bit of this color at the top. Very, very softly, and then just soften it down in on his cheek and in this area here. I don't want it to take over. I want him to be fairly light in his head, but I kind of want just a little softness of that green up there. And again, any color you desire. It can be fluorescent pink. It could be Brenda pink, if Brenda's watching. Yeah. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this buff titanium and I'm just mixing it into where I had the green on my palette. So just be inventive with your colors. make sure you get water in there. And I'm going to just pull little strokes of this color, like almost like feathery strokes, toward the bottom of the belly here. Okay, take a wet brush that's been sort of wiped off and just use water and just soften it in, because I want him to be light, but I want to give that sort of feathery appearance. Just sort of softening it all. Keeping it just really soft. Oh, I like him so much. And I might even take a little bit of this creamy marble white, or Spanish white, I'm sorry, it's called Spanish white, and just drop in a little bit of that creamy color. I might go back to a little bit of that initial gray that I used, and just in this again tuck in a little bit under his eye here. Just dab it, and a little bit again under his cheek, and a little bit inside of his cheek. So anything I could have possibly chosen to do is going to work. All right. You could put spots on your bird. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll put some spots on him as he dries. But remember the parts of the bird: the head, the breast, the tail, and the wing. They can all be separate, or they can all be the same. All right. You can mix and match to your heart's content. You can put a little robber mask on them by putting some dark between his beak and his eye, and then bring it back to the back of the head if you want to. You can make his head a different color than his body. Look at some birds, see how they're put together, and imagine how you would want your perfect little bird friend that you can call down and sit with you anytime, to visit with you. He'll come. You know, I love imaginary creatures like that. So sweet. All right, so I feel like I want to put some spots on him, so I'm going to use the same color that I used at the top of his wing there, and put a little bit of that and dilute it a little bit. You don't want it to be too strong. And I'm just going to put a few little spots, and by spots I just mean just drop in a few random spots. See how I like it. If I don't, I can blend it in. Oh yeah, I like it. Just a couple here and there. Little spots on my bird. I can soften them with a little water. They're just subtle little spots on him. Very cute. All right, the only thing I have to do now is his toes. He's pretty wet still. If I put his toes in, it might rush up into the body, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm gonna let him dry for a minute, and then I'll come back and put his toes on. Okay, toes. I am gonna use paint, and I'm gonna use a tiny little brush, a 3-0, and this is a liner, a fine liner, so it's extra long, and so holds a lot of paint, and it's good for long little toes. Yeah, there you go. It's good for long toes. And really, that's all we're doing. We're just painting these long toes. And so I just start here. And here. One's longer than the others, and gosh, that's really all it is. And then sometimes I'll just come into the eye and make sure that I'm happy. Boy, it's hard for me to see sometimes. Just exaggerating that top of the eye and the bottom. And you can take a little bit and just put sometimes little dots underneath if you want to give it a little extra oomph. Do I need to enhance the bottom of the beak? Yes. And that's just really simple. I'm just going to take this teeny tiny brush and pull a little bit there and a little bit up here. There's a little hole there, you know what I mean? So I just made sure that it had a little extra on there. So nothing that profound today, just a tiny little bird friend. Sometimes that's what we need most. Tiny little bird friends. And it's so easy to paint them for yourself. And yeah, there you go. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I can't wait to see your little bird friend. And I don't know, it's just one more thing to have in your tool bag, right? How to paint a little bird for someone. Brighten their day. All right, everybody, brighten your day, right? Thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Take care.